No, I wouldn't leave it to the states.
You wouldn't, right?
No, I would.
You would say completely. It's up to the
My
woman,
belief is we should leave it to the woman. We shouldn't have government involved,
even if it's full term.
even if it's full term.
The networks keep polling this election coming up in November as a two-man race, Trump versus Biden. I don't know why they do that. This is not a two-man race. This is at least a three-man race, if not a five-person race. The other candidates, Cornel West, Jill Stein, and of course, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And there's a lot of speculation about who those people help or hurt come election day. Well, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. appeared this week and was asked point blank where he stood on the issue of abortion. Take a look.
But so in other words, keeping it as is with Roe versus Wade having been overturned and leaving it up to the states to determine if and when a woman can have an abortion?
No, I wouldn't leave it to the states.
You wouldn't, right?
No, I would.
You would say completely. It's up to the woman.
My belief is we should leave it to the woman. We shouldn't have government involved,
even if it's full term.
Even if it's full term.
Sage Steele, good job there on her podcast. And y'all, put your shoes on. What's going on here? All right, Sarah, I'll give him this much. At least he's being more honest than the pro-abortion Democrats on this issue, because they try to dodge that. If asked about, well, even full term, oh, nobody's asking for full term. Nobody wants, nobody's saying full term. Or they'll just continue to repeat over and over again, I just want to return to Roe v. Wade. I want to return to Roe v. Wade. At least he's saying it. But is that a winning message?
Absolutely not. Look what happened with Terry McAuliffe in 2019, where he said, I support full-term abortion, even after the baby's born, just, end the life. But again, this is one of those things for RFK Jr., where we have no idea what he's thinking about anything at any time. There's a difference between being an independent and not having a stance on anything. And it just feels with this campaign that he just keeps flip-flopping if he's a Democrat, if he's an independent, if he's a libertarian, if he's et cetera, et cetera. So it's nice to see that he has an issue, but it's not going to land with voters at this point. We need to know what he's thinking.
Again, I give him points for honesty, Andy, but it's very rare for a politician to come out and say that at this day and age.
Absolutely. And I wonder if Republicans, these Republican never-Trumpers who would never vote for the bad orange man, will compare RFK Jr.'s stance, this extreme stance on abortion, with Trump's mean tweets. Now, you mentioned earlier, Larry, does this help or hurt Biden? And I think it hurts him. I think that there's some extreme Democrat leftists, or they're kind of the same thing, who believe that Biden doesn't go far enough on abortion. And hearing what RFK Jr. just said, that could drive them to him. And on the other side, these never-Trump Republicans could be shocked with this extreme, gruesome stance on abortion, and all of a sudden they might consider the bad orange man.
Yeah, that really is the critical question, Akash. And you watch this stuff, you watch the polls. This is a big part of what you got to do to be able to push policies, is to know where the American people are and how they might vote. I still hear from some people, smart people in this town, that think RFK Jr. is going to hurt Trump more than Biden. But I don't see Trump voters going his way after this kind of messaging on that issue.
Well, I think that some of that remains to be seen. He certainly has said things, to Sarah's point, that appeal to factions on both sides, right? Some of the stuff on vaccines and the anti-establishmentarianism might appeal to some Trump people. He obviously is super, super progressive on this issue. And so I think it remains to be seen who he pulls from. I would not say with definitive assurance that he's going to pull more from one or the other. I think what this really demonstrates is just how frustrated the country is with these two mainstream candidates that the parties have nominated. I mean, 4 days ago, Nikki Haley just got 22% in Indiana. She dropped out of the race 2 months ago and was out of contention long before that. I think that's what RFK represents more than anything, is that people dislike both of these candidates, and ultimately it will be one of these two that becomes president. But as far as choosing which one he's going to draw more from, I think he chooses his words very carefully, to Sarah's point, that he's done enough to appeal to fringes on both sides that I don't know if we're really going to have an answer to that before November.
Well, and actually, to that point, in this same news cycle, on an interview with MSNBC, he would not rule out giving pardons to some of the people convicted from January 6th. And I know that issue raises emotions for a lot of people, Akash, but I do think polling shows that the majority of Americans think that there's quite a few people who have been jailed unjustly, because they literally, were just walking through a door held open by a Capitol police officer. So maybe is that one of those issues where he's sort of playing both sides here?
Yeah, absolutely. He's doing this anti-establishmentarianism, and it applies to both sides. Again, January 6th was a horrible day that the vast majority of Americans rightfully think was beyond, acceptable content. I think to make that something that is like a major portion of your campaign, or even something that you emphasize, you're obviously doing that very intentionally, right? RFK is doing that because he wants to try to peel off Trump voters. He does things on the left because he wants to try to peel off Democratic voters. If that's his entire strategy, I mean, it could certainly make the difference one way or another in the election. But I think it's just sort of a, it's an interesting and odd way to run a presidential campaign, and it doesn't really give America the contrast of visions that we deserve between two major political parties to choose who our next president's going to be.
But Andy, he is running an odd campaign. I will give him that. But Andy, he's a Kennedy. And I'll tell you, and especially membership of AMAC, whether it's the younger members who have fond memories of Teddy Kennedy when he wasn't, assaulting waitresses allegedly in Washington, or RFK's dad, Bobby Kennedy, or JFK. I mean, there is something about that name. And when you look at him, it's like, yeah, he's a Kennedy. That actually goes places with some voters. Is it working?
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I believe the Kennedy name has absolutely no cachet with AMAC members. I just don't think it's what it used to be. That coupled with the fact that RFK Jr.'s family turned on him. And when you talk about RFK Jr. talking about pardoning the J6, some J6 people that are in jail, it sounds like pandering when it comes from him. And I think folks will see through that. And if President Trump is successful, I think they sincerely believe that he would actually follow through with that promise.
Sarah, when you're working on a campaign, you never know what the news cycle is going to bring you and what old story about your candidate might come up. This week, I never thought I'd see this kind of headline, but it was revealed that RFK Jr. admitted under oath years ago during a divorce proceeding that a doctor had found that a worm had been in his brain and had died there after eating a portion of his brain. How do you handle that talking point?
You don't. You just let it go. I mean, honestly, of course that's going to resurface. It's wild, it's weird, and it changed the narrative a little bit away. But at the same time, what credit does that give him? It's funny, we're all talking about it. There are tons of memes, but it's like beyond that, what kind of standing does it give him? Are we supposed to feel bad for his dead brain worm? It just doesn't make any sense. And actually, circling back, because the other guys made a really good point about January 6th, this just kind of proves how empty-minded the campaign is as a whole. So maybe there's a brain worm in the campaign. See what I did there? Anyways, it was fascinating because the January 6th thing came about with the pardoning. It came about because the campaign sent out a fundraising email from Team Kennedy about pardoning the January 6th protesters. And after a lot of people asked to comment on it, the spokesperson for the campaign said, and I quote, "The statement that we sent out about the January 6th protesters, their liberties, everything like that, does not reflect Mr. Kennedy's views. It was inserted by a new marketing contractor and slipped through the normal approval process."
Oh, man.
That's a big thing. So nobody's thinking. And at least the brain worm kind of just adds a little bit more credit to that.
Geez, that also came on the heels of somebody whoever's running the social media account on behalf of RFK Jr. erroneously tagged Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin and mislabeling him as the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson of Louisiana. Not a good week for the Kennedy campaign there. And I will say this about the Kennedy brainworm story. It allowed smartasses like me to say Joe Biden also had a brainworm, but it died of starvation.